Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transcend with M. And today we're here with Luanne, and I am super excited because she just went through a transition later in life, later in her professional career, and she's gonna teach us a little bit today about mentorship, about why it's important to play to your strengths, and resiliency overall, because you have to be resilient to continue to build a path for yourself in order to fulfill your dreams in your professional life. So, welcome, Luanne. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Monica. I'm so honored to be here because I've seen all of your previous guests and even listened to some of them. So I am amongst a lot of superstars, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
Amazing. I'm super happy to have you here, and I know the time is right because we started talking about having you in the podcast long time ago, and then
Mhm.
we didn't know that this transition was going to take place, and now
Correct.
it's here, and it's
Mhm.
perfect. It kind of aligns with the messaging that we want to give people, which is the message of hope, right? And making sure that it's never too late. It's never too late to do anything you want in life. So tell us a little bit about what happened. Where was Luan? Where is she going now? And you know why mentorship, leadership, empowerment plays a vital role, not just on the decisions that you have had to make, but also on the work that you do today towards younger professionals.
Yeah. All right. That's a lot, but I
That's a
think
lot. That was a huge summary.
yes, I got a lot of years to talk about, but but I think I can do it. So just as a little bit of background, I was at Nichols College for 17 years, and probably and I would still say the highlight of my career. And I was there. I taught in the fields of communication and leadership, management, some marketing. Absolutely loved it. I'm still in touch with students that I had there.
Wow.
And then so it was fabulous. And I guess one of the first lessons I learned there, um I was the associate dean for the last 11 years of my career there, so a long time. And I can
Wow.
remember I had a mentor there, and when that position came open, I was asked, "Are you going to apply for this?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm not qualified for this." And he's like, "What are you, nuts?" And so, right, like we don't value ourselves enough. I look back on that and I say, "Oh my God, like I could have left that opportunity on the table." And luckily, he really encouraged me and said, "No, listen, I think you can do it." So I applied.
Yeah.
And then I was the associate dean. So I was in a leadership position for 11 years. And again, absolutely loved it, developed leadership programs, still working with students. But then about 2 or 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to return to the corporate environment. Because training and development has always been in my background. I was teaching leadership and communication. I used to do some of that in financial services years ago. And an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity came to join MAPFRE Insurance and to be in their human resources department as a training and development program manager, work on leadership training, and to lead a women's leadership network, which I'll
Mm-hmm.
share how I met you, right, Monica?
Yeah.
That's how we became connected. But that was my favorite part of that job, working with all the women at MAPFRE and bringing in guest speakers. And then I met you at the
Mm-hmm.
women's conference, and you graciously came in. And I liked my time at MAPFRE. Missed higher education a little bit, but it was good to be back in the business environment
Mm-hmm.
versus higher ed. But then my most recent opportunity came up, and it really, and I'm going to tell you, I think again, it was another situation of I just had to kind of say to myself and push myself to say, you got to take the chance because, and I've developed it more, but I think you miss all the chances you don't take. And I know that sounds corny because, you hear that in athletics a lot. You miss all the
Yeah.
chances you don't take. But you know what? It's true because what's the worst that can happen? Someone can say no. So this job at Harvard Medical School became available in their
Yeah.
human resources department, and it was like the job description was written for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it, and a little bit of imposter syndrome kind of sunk in because I'm like, oh, this will never. I'm too late in my career now. I'll just stay here. I'm going to ride it out.
Mm,
Um, and I just said, you know what? I'm not going to ride it out because riding it out is no fun. Sometimes it
no.
is. It might be appropriate, but I wasn't ready to do that. And I applied and it worked out. And so I've had a lot
Amazing.
of, it is, a lot of reflection because I think, again, imposter syndrome, or we set limits on yourself. And I was definitely setting limits on myself, like saying, no, I've done, too many years here. I'm just going to stay here. Um, but got a hold of myself. And I think part
Yeah.
of that is because I do leadership training. I said, I've got to walk the talk. I tell other people to do this.
And that's
So,
very difficult to do, right? Very
yeah,
difficult to do.
yeah. Or I would coach students and say, what do you mean you're not going to do this? So it's like, if I'm going to tell other people to do that, I have to follow that. And so
Mhm.
now I'm there. I've been there 4 months, really love it. And I'm in charge of their manager and manager supervisor leadership development program for the Longwood campus and the 3 medical schools. And I'm overseeing a mentorship program there, which
Love
is,
it.
yeah, so rewarding. And, you know, um, so when we talk about mentorship, and the one thing I love about this program, it is focused on professional development, which I love. So I can do a lot of those workshops, having your LinkedIn profile up to date, personal branding, what's your elevator pitch, how to network. I mean, that's hard. Even at this point in my career, and I feel like, Monica, I can remember walking up to you right at the women's conference
Yeah.
again, kind of had to push myself, like, because you were so dynamic. And I'm like, oh, she'd be so great for our speaker series and our women's leadership network. And so I just said, I'm going to ask her because, and I knew how busy you were, but I'm like, she can say no. And but I knew you'd be nice about it if
What's
you
the
did.
worst can happen? That's why that's always my question. What's the worst can happen?
Yeah,
They say no,
yeah,
then we just find another way, right? Like it's
absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
always have to get out of your comfort zone. I always
Yeah.
say that. Even when it costs us a lot to get
Mm,
there, right? Because even, you know, as leaders and as, teachers or mentors or whatever, we struggle with this too, right? It's easier to say it and to put it in practice and tell others, here's the playbook. But sometimes we struggle with those too, because then there is people that we look up to as well, right? That
mhm,
we want to be mentored by. No matter how long, how far you are in your career, we still need those people in our lives too. So
mhm.
I totally get it when you say that, because it happens to me all the time. I'm like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna go? Are you gonna walk there? What are you gonna say? Like, what?
Right,
How are you
right.
going to approach this? Will they be interested? Maybe not, but try anyways.
Right, absolutely, 100%. And I think even at this point, like you're saying, like, have mentors or have people, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not suggesting anyone walk up to someone and say, hey, will you be my mentor?
Mhm,
But have people, like you were saying, look up to. There's
mhm.
certainly people I still look up to, and like, what do they do that makes them effective? And we can't mimic people, right? We can't necessarily
Right.
assume their exact approach, but you can certainly analyze what makes them
Hmm.
effective and how can I incorporate that into my style to make
Yep.
to make me more effective, or
Yep.
to gain even self-confidence from that, to say, wow, if they're doing that, maybe I can do it too. So I think it's just so important to continue to do it every stage of our career.
It is really important. I totally agree with you there. So tell me how you're helping younger professionals. And I know we
Mhm,
were talking a little bit offline about uh, believing, right, in playing to your strengths. So, how is
mhm.
this program you're managing now helping people, helping professionals to achieve what they need to achieve or what they want to achieve? Because sometimes we don't even know, right?
So Right, exactly. So it is a formal mentorship program. And kind of like we were talking about, if you ever have the opportunity to join one of those, if you work at an organization that has one, do it. It'll be because you'll meet so many new people. Because in addition to the person who you might be teamed up with, there will be activities that you can go to, professional development seminars. So we focus a lot on, professional communication and leadership, how to develop those skill set, to move within the organization. Some of it
Yeah.
is germane to the organization of, what are some of the opportunities available. But it really does talk about like start looking around and like planning ahead. Oh, excuse me. And we even say to folks too that you should have several mentors. You have this formal mentorship, but start looking around. And sometimes a mentor can be a friend too. There's nothing
Yep.
wrong with that, right? Like if you have a friend who's doing really well, what's going on? What are they doing well? And I guess, Monica, I'll mention, and I know our audience is primarily female, but we had talked about this before. I think you should have male mentors
Yeah.
because it offers you the perspective. We have to work with men, and they have a different perspective. There's no doubt about it. They're hardwired differently. And I've had
Mhm.
several male mentors, and I have to tell you, they've given me some of the best advice I had in my career. I'd say, "Oh, this is how I'm going to approach this," and they'd be like, "No, you're not. Um, you are not going to do that."
Yeah.
And you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I think create when you're creating your mentor, like I like to call it an advisory board. We should all have our
Mhm.
own personal advisory board. Make it
Yeah.
diverse, right? Like
Yeah.
have, because then you get more perspectives,
Of
um, and
course.
and more insight into what would make you successful.
Yeah, I think so. In my house, I take a lot of meetings in the car, or, if we are going from point A to point B, usually in between, I have something to do. Um, and my husband is always listening. He doesn't really, gets involved. He doesn't get involved with my job at all, but he's always listening. And sometimes he'll come and he's like, well, I had the same situation. This compares to something I went through work, and this is how we approached it. And I was like, huh, okay, I didn't see it from that point of view. So it is always important to have different perspectives, especially if it's not within your same industry. I'm a true believer on that, because sometimes people within the same industry will have a bias, point of view. And it's always good to count with people that maybe don't know anything about what is that you're entering, and that can give you a more objective point of view based on their overall knowledge of X situation, right? So
Mhm.
I totally agree with you. Like, I have had my first mentor was a male. Many mentors on this industry have been male. And there is always, important. All my business partners are male. I have, like, and there's nothing against them, right? But it's also for them good to be surrounded by us, because,
Correct.
it's important for them to learn the different perspectives that we look at, because we tend to be more conscious about certain aspects of people, right? So there is just this whole benefit of doing things together, right? And I think it's pretty amazing when you are able to have that diversity, even when it comes to different backgrounds, different cultures.
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
Not just in terms of like male or female, like, but different perspectives overall. It's always good to have around you, when
Definitely.
we agree to disagree, and when we challenge each other in a respectful way. You're winning already if you have that
To-
around you. I
Totally
truly
agree.
believe that.
Totally agree. Um, and I guess the other thing I wanted to add when we're talking about mentorship because I have found a lot of in this program, and even when I would coach students and things like that, it can be uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people would say it's awkward,
Yeah.
and you know what? It is. So I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it, but it
Yeah.
develops your skills for networking and communication. And when you get through on the other side, you're like, wow, I right, you learn something. And I guess the other
True.
thing I take from that, and I will share now at this point in my and even at this point in my career, I try and step back now and say, when I am uncomfortable, that's when I have the most to learn.
Mm-hmm. True.
And because you are outside of your comfort zone. And, I feel like the last, so I took this position, this most recent position, and I got to tell you, it was uncomfortable. I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, what am I doing? But is this, am I going to regret this? And of course, you always go through that. But it was really, I was just uncomfortable. I'm like, I can do it. I
Yep.
have the skill set. And so if you're uncomfortable, you're learning and you're outside your comfort zone. So I think that is such a great rule of thumb your
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
career. If you're getting too comfortable, it's time to try something new.
Yeah. I always tell everybody the reason I have stayed in this industry for so long is because every day I learn something new.
Mhm,
There is always a new challenge ahead of me.
mhm,
For example, starting to work with a different demographic, that was a huge learning curve for me. I didn't have to ditch everything I learned, in 17 years, but I had to relearn how to think differently,
mhm,
based on demographics, right? And based on different sectors that we were approaching, or I was approaching. And it was a big aha moment because I didn't understood how myself I have separated so much from what I already knew, or who I already was. And then trying to connect the dots again about, being in tune with, my segment of people. It was a whole learning experience, like I learned new things about myself. I learned skills I didn't know I could. Thinking differently, thinking outside the box, all these things that you've been exercising for so long, they came into play all at once, just because you just change something small on your
mhm,
on your approach, right? So I had to relearn a ton of things. And for a couple months, I was really anxious. I'm like, oh my
mhm,
God, I feel like I know nothing. Like, where did my 17 years experience went?
mhm. Yeah,
you
it was
know?
there.
But
Yeah.
then now, after that learning curve, right? Now I'm able to incorporate and intertwine everything I knew with everything I learned. And now, you know, I'm explosive on this side on
Mhm,
certain things, right? So it is just this uncomfortable feeling that you just have to embrace it. You just have to. Otherwise, you won't succeed. You just won't. You will stay stuck on the same place. You have to try. You have to try something new every day.
definitely. I agree 100%. And I liked how you said the word exercising it because it is
Yeah.
muscle memory, right? Like when you
Hmm.
practice it, it will become routine or it becomes part
Yeah.
of your skill set, which is muscle
Yeah.
memory. So, the
Yeah.
practicing of it and the learning of it. So I like how you said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit more about, how can, or how is the mission of your new endeavor helping, the new upbringing of the new generation, while matching them and taking advantage of, pairing these people with, the training that they need. How do you think this is going to help us and the future of, our new generation. Because I think, after all, everything we do, everything we talk about, even these podcasts, is to teach the younger generation how to be resilient. So the reason why we wanted to talk here is because, there is people like yourself making this happen. So tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
So I love that. And I will tell you in mentorship too, if you have been mentored, you have to give back. So pay it forward at some point.
Yeah.
But I would tell you, there's so much to be learned if you are the mentor, and that's called reverse mentoring. So, if I'm involved in a relationship, with someone who's a Gen Z. So those are, like we've got the bookends of our generations. I'm
Yeah.
not a traditionalist, but I am a baby boomer. But there's so much to be learned on both sides. And
Yeah.
I think what comes out of that, and I am going to talk a little bit about because I promote it and it's a near and dear topic and it's part of my trainings. And
Mhm.
it's widely published and talked about, and I encourage people to take a look at it is how do we increase our own self awareness to increase our emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
And really, emotional intelligence, not related to IQ, by the way, not related at all. But EQ, your emotional quotient, it's really being aware of what are my strengths and weaknesses, how do I communicate, and how do I impact other people, and how can I flex to be more effective with different people. You're talking about different demographics. I mean, we should constantly be thinking about, because this is building relationships. And I'm still a firm believer that AI cannot replace the value of, building personal relationships in the business environment. But how can I be more successful?
Yeah.
If I understand myself, because and when I am in conflict with someone, to be saying to myself, okay, what's really going on here? It's a
Mhm.
is it a difference of personality, a difference of value? Is what's the misunderstanding, so that I can, in fact, make it a successful encounter. And having a ask other people what do they think your strengths are.
Mhm.
Ask people for that. Maybe start with your friends. They'll give you unbiased feedback.
Opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and family members, they'll certainly tell you.
Yeah.
But I think what else happens when you start asking a variety of people, you might start getting a little bit of different feedback from all the different audiences, which is normal. We're perceived differently and we behave differently with all the different stakeholders in our lives. So I
Right.
think, as we're mentoring, so that's another dimension of what we're doing. With the mentorship program, but I think it's equally important for those the Gen Zers to understand where are these other folks coming from, so and
Mhm.
then and likewise, so this reverse mentoring, it should be a give and take relationship, if it's going to be effective, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I guess I would end with, I was having a conversation with one of our mentees the other day, and they're really upset that they're not good at some particular software program. They want to go into this field. And I'm like, okay, well, you can continue to learn that. But I
Mhm.
also got a great piece of advice from a mentor of mine. Always play to your strengths. And and so I did ask the person, I was like, do you even like this software program? Do you like, and they're like, no, I hate it. And I'm like, why are you wasting your time? Like,
Mhm.
play to your strengths.
Mhm.
I mean, we certainly want to try and improve, on our weaknesses and developmental needs, but play to your strengths. Don't overpower, with all this, because I think that's part of that imposter syndrome. I got to focus on my developmental needs. Focus on
Yeah.
your strengths.
Yeah. I like that, because sometimes we waste too much time focusing on what doesn't really matter, trying to catch up. And it doesn't matter if it's not in you to like it, to enjoy it, to make something out of it. Learning it because of the sake of learning it, so you can catch up, and that, and to shut up that imposter syndrome, it doesn't work anyways. you
Yeah.
just you just have to follow your authenticity, and you have
Mhm.
to follow, that. I always say, trust that gut feeling.
Mhm.
Trust that gut feeling, because you cannot compare yourself to anybody. You're on your own path at your own time, and that's it, you know.
Yeah,
um so I like that. I like that, and I think it's really important for everyone to understand that, mentorship doesn't mean that you're weak or that you are
mm,
lacking on something, because some people see it uh as a negative thing, right?
that's,
We're like, well, why do I need a mentor? I'm not good enough. Because I've heard it. I've heard it.
mhm,
It exists. Uh, but see it as an opportunity of capacitation, an opportunity of growth, an opportunity to be a step ahead. You never know how much that person can change your life.
I
So
agree.
I truly love that. And thank you so much for agreeing to be with us here today, for doing the work that you are doing. For those on the medical field here, we do have a few Harvard friends. So
Mhm.
hopefully, we can connect them with you, and maybe, we can bring them as mentors.
Ah, yes, I would love that. Would love that so much. Well,
Love it.
it was an absolute privilege to be here. Like I said, you've had a very impressive lineup of just some remarkable women. So I am happy to join the lineup, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luan. I really appreciate it. For those listening today, hopefully after this conversation, you will understand mentorship is key. And there is just a lot of people out there willing to help you. So take on the opportunity. That's the message for today. And trust yourself, don't let that imposter syndrome get the best of you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, Luan. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.